Hi, everyone. Welcome back or welcome to this podcast, How to Write the Future. I'm your host, Beth Barany, and I am an award-winning science fiction and fantasy novelist, as well as writing teacher, creativity coach, podcaster, and filmmaker. I run this podcast because I believe that with our creativity and our desire and passion to write stories, we can remake the world. And my vision and my hope and my mission is to help us revision how we want to be, how we want humanity to be. And my hope is that it is for positive, optimistic futures. Not an easy task. And there are a lot of nuts and bolts that go into writing a good novel, a good science fiction and fantasy novel. And I got a question from one of my clients, Hugh, and he asked me, how do I turn this massive, over 100,000 word epic fantasy novel into 3 books? So that's what we've been working on together. And he brought that question out for more feedback, but also in case any one of you is wrangling with this question. How do you turn a really huge novel into 3 books or maybe more? So we came up with a bunch of questions, and I'm going to go through those today, and hopefully these will help you in your project as well. Now, I'm going to just say, if you have any questions about this topic, you can contact me. And how to do that is with the show notes and howtowritethefuture.com. You could reach out to me, write me a note, send me a voicemail. I have a thing set up for that. And just ask me a question, or you can ask me a question on the socials, tagging my name, and reach out. Ask me your question. And also, just so you know, I have been running this podcast for nearly 3 years. As I record this is May 13, 2025. And I do this because I care very much about this topic. I'm a writing teacher and a creative, and I want to share my wisdom and knowledge with you. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe, all the things, leave a review, and I welcome donations. I have a tip jar. You'll see the link for that in the show notes as well. If you want to support us, that is definitely another way you can do that. And really the easiest thing that you could do to support us is like and subscribe. That is really beautiful. All right. And thank you for your support. So let's get on with the show. Today, we're going to talk about, as I said, how do we turn one novel into a trilogy, which is the most common thing in science fiction and fantasy. Boy, do we love our series. I know I do. I love reading series and I write series. Something that you might notice as you consider this is you might have a lot of fears about moving one book into 3 books. And you might be hit right away with imposter syndrome. So do you feel like you're an imposter if you want to move this one big novel into 3 books? Yeah, that might be something that you face. And how do you handle that? One of my favorite authors, I'm pretty sure that she did this. And so there's a lot of ways that you can handle breaking a one big novel into 3 parts. And the novelist I'm thinking of is Elizabeth Moon, and it's her Deed of Paxanarian. It's an epic fantasy saga. When I read that, I realized there is an option about turning a big novel into 3 novels, is you just cut it. I literally had to have books 2 and 3 lined up so that I could read the rest of the story. There was no ending at the ends of books 1 and 2. It just stopped. I'm here to tell you that if the prospect is so overwhelming, and you think, how could I do this? And oh, who am I to do this? You could just chop the book into 3 equal parts and publish it that way. Why not? If that is your passion, I say go for it. Now, if you're faced with the idea of creating 3 books that are connected and you have to read them in order, but you're like, how am I going to do that? There's no way I could do that. Who am I to be able to do that? I just want to encourage you that, yes, it is a challenging task and you may not know how to do it. And the only way to figure it out is to go through it. With any big creative endeavor, I can speak from firsthand experience. I didn't know how to write a novel, and then I wrote a novel because I didn't do it all in one day. I only did it step by step. In fact, that very first novel, I only spent 1 day a week on it. It did take me a long time. It took me 5 years, and I finished it. All that to say, just because you don't know how to completely solve the problem doesn't mean you can't start right now, because you don't actually have to solve all the problems. You only need to solve the next problem, whatever is next for you. And then you need to solve whatever shows up next after that. So basically, imposter syndrome, I think one of the reasons it comes out is because people think they need to have it all figured out before they start. But actually, most people don't. I have yet to meet anybody who's figured it all out before they start. Another way to handle imposter syndrome is to listen to a lot of people's stories. I actually don't know Elizabeth Moon's story about how the deed of Paxenarian was just chopped into 3 parts. It very well could have been a decision by her editor and publisher. In fact, I bet you that it was. That's my guess. So gather stories, ask people how they did it. And I tend to plan my books one at a time, but I write in series. But I also didn't know that book 1, Henrietta the Dragon Slayer, which is for those watching a video, which is behind me. I didn't know that when I finished book 1 that there would be a book 2. It took me a little while to figure that out. And then while I was writing book 2, I realized the entire story that I wanted to contain in the second book would be its own thing, and I couldn't actually get to the rest of the story. And so there obviously had to be a third book. So I did create endings for each one. Let me see if I can my desk is on wheels, see. And there's book 3, the red cover. So I have Henrietta the Dragon Slayer, Henrietta and the Dragonstone, and Henrietta and the Battle of the Horse Mesa. But I didn't conceive of all 3 at once. I really did it one at a time. So all that to say, let me move my desk again. All that to say that you don't have to have it all figured out when you start. So I'd be really curious to find out, for those who might feel imposter syndrome, what is below the surface? What are you comparing yourself to? Imposter syndrome is often about comparisons. And it's really not fair to compare ourselves to anybody else. We don't know their journey. We don't know how they got there. We don't know where they were when they started versus where we were when we started. So it's totally apples and oranges, in my opinion. And this is something that I have to coach myself on repeatedly. Comparing myself to anybody else is really not fair to me. So when you compare yourself to anybody else, or even some perfect vision of how you think you should be, that's really not fair, because it's not taking into account who you really are right now. So we want to work with your strengths and work with where you are right now and take the next step. That's all you need to figure out right now, is the next step. And eventually you're going to get there. All right, so that was with my coaching hat on for sure. And here's another coaching-related question. It's such a big topic of turning one big novel into 3 books, into a trilogy. Hugh asked, how do you maintain momentum and avoid feeling pressure after the first book is finished? Might you want to finish 2 or all of them and then publish over time? So that's a really great question. And this answer will serve for anyone who is working on series and maybe has planned and written them ahead of time. Do you release them one at a time? Do you wait till everything is beautiful before you even try and publish? So, of course, there's a lot of schools of thought on this. And it really, in my opinion, honestly, this really depends on your digestion. What can you stomach? What can you handle? So for some people, it will be very satisfying to go through the entire process of one book and bring it to polish and then publish, and then going back and doing it again with the next one, and so on and so forth. If you're a beginning writer, that might be the best way to gain momentum, because there is such a tremendous, incredible release that happens when you publish a book and when you go through that whole process. And there are so many decisions that it's almost better to just get it out the door, learn all that you can, and then take that knowledge that you've learned from that entire process of polishing and revising and making your book beautiful, beautiful cover, and being really proud of it and letting it go, so that you have room to make all those new decisions for the new book, and do that one at a time. Now, how do you maintain momentum and avoid feeling pressure after the first book is published? That kind of comes back to one of my core teachings, which is take a deep breath and be in the present time. Be here, be now, be with your project as it exists right now. And it's really great, actually, once book one is done, say you decided to publish book one, and then you have book two, and it feels daunting because then you got to climb that mountain again of editing and revising and all the decisions, to just really digest all that you have learned and really help yourself integrate everything that you have learned so that you can take this new project, which may feel like you're at the bottom of the mountain again, but actually you've already gone through this with one book and you will be able to apply lessons learned to this next book. But don't expect it to be perfect. Honestly, for some writers, they're fast learners. They're going to integrate really fast and the next book will be much better than the first book. Or maybe you got to get 3 books under your belt or 5 books under your belt before you feel like you know what you're doing, like me. That's how it happened for me. It took me a bunch of books to feel like, oh, now I understand the process. So really, don't compare yourself to me. Just take what you know and draw a circle around yourself and live inside of your own bubble about what it is that you know and that you can do. And that's all that matters. Really comparing yourself to some imagined past, present, or future version of yourself is not going to be helpful. So that is my main teaching. Come back to yourself and to yourself in the present and work with what is in your energy field and in your know-how and in your knowledge and experience. And also the kind of resources that you have, the people you know that you can reach out to for help, and all the amazing resources that live in internet land, of which there's so many. So one of the core questions about turning a novel into a trilogy is, why would you even want to do that? And it has a lot to do with bandwidth for you as an author. If the story feels too daunting to edit, you might want to do this. If the story feels very unwieldy to market, you might want to develop to turn it into 3 parts. Those are the 2 main reasons why you would want to take a huge novel and chop it into parts, into a trilogy. So what do I recommend? I really recommend that you do what feels feasible to you. I have published a novel that's over 100,000 words, and that is book 3 in my Henrietta the Dragonslayer trilogy. For those watching at home on video, I'm moving my desk again. So you can see the red cover, Henrietta and the Battle of the Horse Mesa. And I have a book I'm working on right now that's 135,000 words. And am I going to chop it into pieces? Probably not, because I can handle it. I can handle the bigness. I can handle the stories. Actually, I'm just considering this right now. I could even put into the book parts 1, part 2, part 3, but I probably won't. We'll see. We'll see what the beta readers think. We'll see what the response is from my early readers, my critique partners. If they're like, oh my God, this is too much, then I might consider putting parts inside of the book. But I don't want to publish it as multiple books. All right, I don't need to. My capacity is I can do this. And earlier on in my career, the first Henrietta was only 260 pages. And the second Henrietta book was 300 pages. And obviously the third Henrietta book's 500, I believe. So as my skills grew, I was able to write longer books, and feel confident about releasing them and marketing them. So really, what's priority? If you're faced with a huge manuscript that you don't know how to edit, but you want to be editing, priority is ask yourself, do I want to turn this into 3 books and work on each one separately? Notice if that feels priority, because if you're stuck and you're not moving forward, it could be because the project is too big. And that's another reason why to break it into 3 parts. How do you ensure consistency across all 3 books? What a great question. So to answer this question, I am going to talk about world building and keeping track of your story world. So what does consistency mean? If you mean all the names of things and your culture and your world building and your character. So first of all, you want to keep track of all the story world elements. And then second, you want to have some trusted critique partners or an editor or beta readers or all of the above to help you stay consistent. One of the things my critique partners will say is, oh, no, Janie wouldn't do that, or Henrietta wouldn't do that. And they help me stay honest because your early readers, they're going to start to take ownership of your characters and help you stay on the straight and narrow of who these characters are. So it's really wonderful to have dedicated beta readers who you cultivate over time. So that's something to think about as you start building, as you start getting ready to share your work with others, is start to put it out there that you want some dedicated readers and beta readers who can give you feedback just on the story itself, and critique partners, ideally, who can give you feedback on craft. Or you hire an editor, which is a cost and an investment, or you do some combination of that. And they will all help you stay consistent because it is a lot. It is a lot. I'm going to share on the screen now some images from my story world building file inside of Scrivener. This one is for my Janie McAllister Space Station Mystery Series. And you can see I do a lot of things and I keep track of a lot of things, including place names, character traits, customs, logos. Gosh, so many things, the whole 9 yards. It's also where I brainstorm and where I wrote my first draft. So here's a really great question. How do you develop character arcs that span 3 books? It's a really great question. Something to consider is your genre, number one. The expectation for epic fantasy is there's going to be a big change of character, big transformation from the beginning to the end of the 3 books. And that means the change can be radical also in each individual book. Epic fantasy often has the expectation of lots of changes and lots of transformations. You can consider, where do you want the character to be by the end? And are they going to go through some radical transformations by the end of book 1, and then maybe another by the end of book 2, and then maybe at the end of book 2, since it's the midpoint between, it can be a big turning point. Think of Empire Strikes Back, very big turning point at the end of that movie. So that's developed as a tradition, and you'll see that in a lot of storytelling sagas where 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through the saga, through the epic, there'll be such a drastic change. The reader's like, I don't know how the main character is going to come back from that. Don't they need to accomplish this big goal? I really don't know how they're going to get there. So you end book 2 with that really dramatic hook, so that book 3 is really, the stakes have gotten even bigger. So you want to think of your character arc in terms of transformation, but also as they change, the stakes need to get higher. So both they need to grow to be able to meet the bigger challenge. So you might want to think of what is the big change by the end of book 1, where the reader's like, wow, now what? Now that their life has completely done a 180, now what? And then they go on to book 2, and the book 2 is like amazing and so much transformation and change and challenges. And then you got to end with like, oh no, you make us really worried for your character. They're faced with a really hard choice. You could even leave it on a cliffhanger, or they've done something really dramatic that you're like, how do they come back from that? So you see what I'm going for is not only do you want your character to change, especially in fantasy, but you also want it to be dramatically connected up with the plot. Now, not in every genre or subgenre will you have dramatic character arcs. Maybe your character just gets older and wiser and makes some changes that reflect their maturity. Maybe your character only shifts a little bit, and every few books do you have a dramatic arc. And that's more what I'm doing with my Janie McAllister Space Station Mystery Series. Like in a lot of detective stories, she doesn't change a whole lot from book to book, but over the span of the whole series, she will have shifted. There'll be some points in the bigger series where she has shifted. So I have a big shift that is going to happen in book 5 and that I lead up to by the time you've read all 4 books. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. So something that I did is when I wrote both the Henrietta books and the Janie books, I didn't really know consciously what the character shift was in the first draft, but I made some decisions in the revision phase. But I did not know what the next book change arc would be until I got to those edits and wrote that book. So you don't actually have to know it all ahead of time. I would say trust your intuition and notice the change doesn't have to be linear. It can be up and it can be down, like a change for the better and a change for the worse, or it could be a change professionally. It can zigzag. It can look like real life. But what you might want to do is just track the character change from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. And then when you're faced with the next book, go, how do I make this different? How do I give it a new feeling so that we're not rehashing the same changes? We have some new changes. What are the new changes that my character can be faced with? And then you just do that one book at a time. You don't have to have the whole series figured out. You can have a rough idea, which is really fun, and which is what I had for Henrietta the Dragonslayer. I knew by the time I had published book one, I knew that at some point, I didn't know when yet, she was going to have to be this new role in life that was very different for her, but I didn't know how or when I was going to get there. And that's why I had to write book two before I got to book three. So what are common pitfalls to avoid when expanding a trilogy? I would say repetition, where it feels like you're rehashing similar dynamics between characters and character arc. So you want to challenge yourself, and you want to get help too with editors and beta readers and the like to make sure you're doing something fresh in the other book and in the final book, so that the story doesn't feel episodic, meaning this happened and then this happened, then this happened, which is very common when we're working on our early drafts. And you want to say, how does this lead to that? And what are the consequences? So you want to make sure that you set up things that have consequences, and then there's a payoff. And that is something that I get a lot of help with, frankly, because I'm not super plot focused. So I get a lot of people who help me make sure my plots have the setups and the payoffs. Actually, I'm very good at the setups. I don't always remember to do the payoffs. So be sure you're checking for whatever challenge you set up in your stories. And hopefully it's multifaceted, that you wrap them up at the end, or you very consciously don't wrap them up at the end and you leave the reader hanging, which is totally fine too. What are some of the other pitfalls? Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. All right. How do you handle world building expansion across 3 books? Take lots of notes, have a map, take lots of notes, copious notes, use something like Scrivener, use a tool that's searchable. I know there's a lot of tools out there that you can use to help you keep track of your world building. I use Scrivener. What about maintaining tension throughout a longer story arc? Yeah, so you want to have a very big goal that only gets achieved by the end of the trilogy. And you need to make that clear at some point what that is, and you need to remind the reader about that. So by maintaining tension, the tension is, will they or won't they obtain the special item or conquer the big baddie or get to this new location? And to maintain tension, you need to create believable, relatable obstacles in which the character really has to struggle through them. So it's not just pro forma. It's not just, oh, here we are at the bridge. We have to cross the bridge. No, make the bridge wobbly. Make the bridge that it might break, or make the bridge cursed, or give their movement through the world and through the story a real conflict with real people and real obstacles. And the way you maintain tension is you increase the stakes at every step. You got to make things worse and worse and worse, and you got to make your character grow to meet each challenge. Now, all huge caveat there, that means you're writing an epic fantasy for a Western audience who are expecting these things. If you're writing a subgenre of science fiction and fantasy that doesn't have those expectations, that's totally fine. Whatever are the expectations in your subgenre that keep the reader turning the page. It's either what's going to happen next, how is my dear character going to fare against these obstacles, how is it going to work out between your main character and the relationships, how are they going to handle this problem? And so you create a relatable character with relatable relationships in situations, even outlandish situations, but that their response to them is relatable. And lastly, what are some best practices for planning plot threads across multiple books? If you're a super plot-oriented, go ahead and break out your writing tool, Scrivener or some other tool, and just take copious notes and write it all down. So you have a map of an outline of all the plot threads. And you can even make a literal map. I've seen writers who do that. My husband, who's a writer and who also writes in the science fiction fantasy realm, created a visual map of the world, but also created a linear map on Canva. And that was really cool, where he put the different plot items happening. So come up with a visual that allows you to see your whole story. Another thing that you can do, and something I do in Scrivener, and I'm going to put it on the screen here, is I will keep track, because I write murder mysteries on space stations. I will keep track of the villain's timeline. I will keep track of the victim's timeline. I will keep track of Janie, the investigator's timeline. And if there's any other timelines I need to keep track of, I will do that as well. And so I create little documents for that. And I do that in revisions, which is how I figure out a lot of these things. Or if you're very plot and outline oriented ahead of writing, do it before you write. All right, so that's it for this week, everyone, on how to turn your one novel, your one huge epic fantasy or sci-fi novel, into a trilogy or multiple books. I want to thank my client, Hugh Tipping, for this question. It's a really great one. If you are wrangling with this topic and you have more questions that I did not cover today, please let me know in the comments section, or email me or DM me, where I am out there in the world on all the socials. You can even leave me a voicemail, which would be awesome. Please like and subscribe wherever you get this podcast, whether it's YouTube or any of the other channels. And also, if you like what you see here, please consider donating at my tip jar. And the link will be in the description. That's all for this week, everyone. Write long and prosper.